Hello and welcome to my channel. So today's video is going to be all about Sophia Dorothea's tragic affair. So Sophia Dorothea was the wife of King George I of Great Britain. But when everything that I talk about in the video happens, he wasn't actually king of Great Britain then. He was still only heir to his father, Ernest Augustus, who was Elector of Hanover. So Sophia Dorothea and George were married on the 21st of November 1682. They were first cousins, naturally, because their fathers were brothers. But right from the start, their marriage was not a happy one. So George and his mother Sophia, another Sophia, did not like Sophia Dorothea because they felt that her birth and her manners were inferior to them. So Sophia Dorothea's mother was basically sort of her father's mistress, but they kind of lived as if they were man and wife, but they didn't really get married until it became clear that Sophia Dorothea needed to go on the marriage market and she needed to be sort of respectable to be able to marry well. So that is when they basically got married. So anyway, George felt that his wife was beneath him, even though that they were cousins. He was really cold to her and he would often scold her, and they would have really loud arguments. But despite all this, they did actually manage to have two children together. George Augustus, who became King George II of Great Britain, and Sophia Dorothea, who became Queen Consort of Prussia. So after the birth of their children, George decided to take a mistress and just completely neglect Sophia Dorothea, and she became really lonely. But all that changed in 1690 when an old friend from childhood, the Swedish Count Philip Christoph von Kongsmarch, came to their Hanoverian court. So Sophia Dorothea and Philip reignited their friendship, and soon this turned into more. By 1694, rumours were going around the court that Sophia Dorothea and Philip were having an affair, and that in 1692 they had actually started sleeping with each other. Now, Sophia Dorothea denied this fact, that they had been sleeping together for the rest of their life. But during their love affair, they did actually write loads and loads of letters to each other. There were 340 by Philip and 320 by Sophia Dorothea. Now, there were actually more letters that had been written between the couple, but these ones were confiscated by the Hanoverian authorities after the affair came out, and they were destroyed. So in the spring of 1694, George and Sophia Dorothea had a very violent argument. Sophia Dorothea had walked in on George and his mistress and their child, who was sleeping in a cradle, and she had obviously got upset with this, and an argument had started to happen, which resulted in George trying to strangle Sophia Dorothea. So Sophia Dorothea went back to her home in Celle to see her parents and to try and convince them to let her divorce George, but they wouldn't let her. So she returned back to Hanover, where she, Philip, and one of her ladies-in-waiting planned to all run away together. But before they could do so, Philip disappeared. So at the Hanoverian court, there was a woman called Countess Clara Elizabeth von Platten. She had been the mistress of George's father and had tried to get Philip to marry her daughter. But Philip refused to do so, so Clara went to George and told him all about his wife's affair with Philip and about the plan for them to run away together. And George was not best pleased with this. So on the 11th of July 1694, Sophia Dorothea and Philip met in her apartment at the Linenschloss to finalise their plans for running away. Philip said that he had a coach waiting for them, but Sophia Dorothea asked him to wait 24 hours so that she could say goodbye to her children. So the story goes that after Philip had left Sophia Dorothea's apartments, he was killed on the orders of either George or his father. His body was then weighted with stones and thrown into the river Line that run next to the Linenschloss. There was also a rumour that Philip had actually been buried in the palace. He had been thrown into the palace latrines and then covered in quicklime, and then a wall built up to hide him. Now in 2016, construction workers who were installing a lift in the Linus Clough actually found some human remains in a pit. Now it was thought that these remains were Philip's, but investigations into this suggest that this is unlikely. So Philip's disappearance was actually noticed by people. King Augustus II of Poland and Saxony actually spent weeks looking for him. And even King Louis XIV of France sent agents to Hanover to see if they could find out what happened to Philip, but neither of them found anything. So after her affair was exposed, Sophia Dorothea finally got the divorce that she wanted, but she was unable to live a free life. George had actually placed her under arrest while the divorce proceedings were going through. But once the divorce was announced on the 28th of December 1694, Sophia Dorothea was put under house arrest at Alden House. She was forbidden from marrying again and banned from seeing her children again. She had her name removed from official documents, her title was stripped from her, and the churches in Hanover were banned from including her in their prayers. Sophia Dorothea stayed in her prison for the rest of her life. She was only allowed to live in the north wing and was guarded 24 hours a day. Her mail and her visits were strictly controlled, though her mother was able to visit her whenever she wanted to. But she never saw her children again, and this actually caused some tension between her children and their father. Sophia Dorothea died on the 13th of November 1726 at the age of 60. She was buried without ceremony in the cemetery in Alden. 4 weeks after her death, George died. So that was the story of Sophia Dorothea and her tragic affair with Count Philip. I think it's a shame that she wasn't allowed to be with him. I mean, her husband had taken a mistress and she had already given her husband the children, so he had his heir, and they didn't get on. Why couldn't she have just gone off and just had a lover, even if they divorced and she was allowed to marry him, or even if she was never allowed to marry him, why wasn't she allowed to spend this time with him, considering her husband was able to spend time with his mistress? I just think it's completely unfair. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.